on this side of the wall. Side one is where you put in your wood in order to make the fire. And then side number two would be the side where you actually do all of your cooking. Okay, so you can see that it wasn't really cooking over an open fire the way that we might think, but it was more stovetop the way you have a gas stove today where you still have a flame, but you can control it. So they would manually control it by a person on the other side of the separating wall, but it was still a similar sort of principle to the way a gas stove works in the modern era. But even the kitchen was well fortified because we can see that we've got the firing slit right there. Okay, so they were very serious about their fortifications here. Now, in addition to the triple stove system, so they were used to cooking for a good number of people. There were probably about between 100 to 300 people in the fortress at any given time. On the other side, this is where your food preparation took place and potentially food storage as well. Okay, so let's head on out and go to the other side of the stove so we can see exactly what the other side looked like.
What would the furnace have been fueled with? And the same thing with the ovens. How would they have fueled them? It's not like there were
Wood.
many trees. Was it?
Yeah. Yeah, this area is well, let's say it's a lot more wooded than Masada is. I mean, and even if it's not, pure wood, you can find a lot of shrubs and other things in the area that'll burn relatively easy. I'd say finding things to burn is much more of an issue in Masada than it is up in this area. Okay, so up here we have, right, so this is where you would put in your wood. You would have at least three people, assuming you were functioning all three stoves at once. You would have at least one person per opening to keep the fire levels going at the different rates that you needed, depending on what you were cooking. And then, of course, another very important place, this is where you would do your laundry. So we have a cistern up here as well. We went into the cistern at the bottom part of the fortress, but that wasn't the only cistern up here. We have multiple cisterns. And in this one, well, because it was a cistern that was just directly into the ground, they put up a very large circular stone that would protect people from falling into the cistern, because the last thing you want is for your knights to drown in the cistern, because that would just be unfortunate for a lot of reasons. Now, we can also see that they were using buckets to pull it out, and this is what we see in the archaeology. We can see here the large stone that was protecting the entrance to the cistern. Back here, like we saw in the picture, this is where you would actually do your laundry. And then we can also see part of the drainage system that they had in place here, funneling water into the cistern itself to help keep the water flowing. All right, so we've seen a lot of Crusader Fortress. So what have we done so far? Well, over here we started off with a lovely view looking out to the Jordan Valley down here. We kind of walked, instead of the bridge, we walked down here through the moat and walked up a bunch of stairs that we put in place in order to get in through the first entranceway. And then we walked to the huge tower that was protecting the road, made a 180-degree turn, and then another 90-degree turn in order to get into the fortress itself, into the outer fortress. We walked here through the archways. We went to see some of the water. We saw the bathhouse, and we saw the blacksmith. And bathhouse and blacksmith are in the same place. Okay, we've got the chimney stack, so that's where the furnace was. We saw this tower, which not too much remained of it, and then we walked in through here. We did not get killed while we were walking through here, which good job, guys. And then we kind of walked around like this to come in through the more impressive archways. And then we came into this tower. We went in through an entrance over here. We took a look at this staircase. We came here to the kitchen, and then we went to the other side to see where they put the wood in. And now we just saw the upper cistern and the laundromat. Okay, great. So we have seen all of that. Now, if they were so serious about their fortifications, what do you do if, for some reason, the invading army is able to break through all of your defenses? You have to have an escape plan, okay? And the Hospitallers definitely had an escape plan. They had secret entrances or exits that led down into the moat. And Well, we already talked about how the moat was a dry moat, so you didn't have to know how to swim. You weren't worried about getting eaten alive by any sort of sea monsters. So you know that if all else fails, you get yourself into the moat, and then you can either climb out the other side, you can try to run your way down the cliff, you can try to come back out and take your fortress from the main entrance and try to capture it back that way. But at least you have some sort of plan that you can still enact in order to keep yourself alive. Now, of course, this bridge that we're looking at is a modern invention. It was put there so that we could exit much more conveniently than having to go back out and come out the way we came in. So we're also going to use that bridge. And like we said, there are multiple entrances and exits into the moat system down here. So we're going to walk up a different set of stairs in order to get back up there. Now, with all of this in place, what happens to the hospitallers that are here? So we talked a teensy bit when we were in Tzfat about the Crusader fortress that was there and how things didn't end so well for them with Saladin in the year 1187 and how he comes in and he promises the Crusaders there that if they surrender, they'll be allowed to go free and go home, and that he does not uphold his end of the bargain. Well, Saladin makes a similar sort of deal with the Crusaders in this fortress, with the Hospitallers here, 2 years later in 1189. So even after all of the main battles were fought, the Hospitallers were still holding strong, and they finally come to a deal. But this time, Saladin does honor his end of the bargain, and the Hospitallers are able to go home and head back to Europe. So, a little bit more about the Hospitallers because we never finished that part of our story. We said that there were a lot of pilgrims that were coming over along with the knights, and well, let's face it, this was really irritating for the knights because they were here to try to help their fellow brethren regain control of the holy sites. And then you've got all these people tagging along, like, oh, look at that, oh, that's so pretty. And all of a sudden the knights became babysitters. And that's not what they had signed up to do. And that was really obnoxious. So we have another group of monks called the Templars, and they say, hey, we can help. Why don't you make us knights, and then we can come along and we can be the security guards for these pilgrims, and then you guys don't have to deal with them. The knights like this idea, and so they knight these monks, the Templars, and then the Templars go out with the pilgrims, and the Crusaders can actually go do what they were supposed to do. The Hospitallers really like this idea, and they say, okay, so how can we help? Well, we can take care of these pilgrims once they arrive in the Promised Land. And so what do? They open up bed and breakfasts in the area. And so the Hospitallers really open up the genre of hospitality here in Israel. And that's where the word hospitality comes from the Hospitaller Knights. This is also, I'm just going to pause the video because I'm not done yet. This is also, okay, so we'll get to Tomarken in just a minute. I'm still with the Hospitallers, okay? So they opened up these bed and breakfasts. It's where the branch of hospitality comes from. But there's a problem because all of these pilgrims that are coming and need a place to stay, well, they've just been walking from Europe to Israel. That takes months. They weren't really prepared for this journey. There are people sick. There are people dying. They're malnourished at best. And so the Hospitallers end up taking care of the sick in these bed and breakfasts leading to the hospitals, which also comes from the Hospitaller Knights. Okay, so we have both the hospitality field coming from these knights and also our hospitals coming from this same place, which is why the words are so similar. Okay, same people made them both. Okay, so look, it says to mark in 1994 on this lovely sign, and we are entering the sculpture garden that was established here. Tamarkin is a famous Israeli artist and sculptor, and this is the first sculpture garden of its kind. It was a joint production between the National Parks Authority and Yigal Tamarkin. The National Parks Authority provided the land, and Tamarkin provided the sculptures. So it was a win-win situation for both. Now, Tamarkin was born in 1933 in Germany, in Dresden. His mom was Jewish. His dad was a German Christian. Needless to say, in the 1930s in Germany, that was not going to work out. His mom takes him to Israel. She remarries, and his stepfather adopts him. So he doesn't actually know that that's not his father until he somehow figures it out on his own. Now, needless to say, this caused some trust issues between him and his family. And later on, when he's interviewed, he says that he doesn't feel like he really fits in anywhere. He doesn't really belong anywhere. And, you know, it was very difficult finding too much information about him. And so these things may or may not be related, but I'm pretty sure they're more related than not. Now, again, growing up in uh, during this time period, his art, well, a lot of it deals with war, specifically on the anti war variety of art. A lot of the colors that we're seeing come from the influence that the pop art movement of the 1960s had on him and his artwork. So we have the anti war art. A lot of his artwork also involves the Holocaust. And up here in Kohav HaYarden, because of the location, he also made a new series of sculptures that was based on the Crusades and the fortress that we just took a tour of. Now, he's a very famous artist and sculptor here in Israel. He created a lot of the different memorial sites here in Israel. And the most famous one, if you guys have been to Tel Aviv, you may or may not have been to Rabin Square. And there is a large sculpture. It's kind of an upside down, strange pyramid thing that is a Holocaust memorial that Tumarkin sculpted. Okay, so his sculptures are really all over the country. This is one of the sculpture gardens that he has created, but definitely not the only one. And well, his artwork is definitely very interesting and very difficult to find explanations for. But that's one of the lovely things about art. You can interpret it, however you interpret it. And so we said he was influenced by the pop art culture of the 1960s. He also did a lot of assemblage work. So a lot of his constructions are sort of 3D collages that are made from scraps that he found. He also got donated to him by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. They donated a bunch of weapons that were no longer functioning or useful to them, and he took them apart and used a lot of that in his artwork. And so he really, he really tried to stick with turning swords into plowshares sort of motif in a lot of his anti-war art. Now, the sculpture that we're coming up to is, to me, it was a very striking sculpture, and it also happened to be the only one that I understood what the explanation said. And so here we go. We have the pyramid on the left that's supposed to represent the sort of cornerstone and foundations of modern civilization. And then at the very base of the pyramid, you have this sort of doorway that's supposed to be modeled after the entrance into Birkenau. Of course, we have the train car coming in with the person on it, and we can see that there is a metal rod that is pulling the train car into the place. And so this is just one of his sculptures, one of his works of art. And when we come here in person, you'll have plenty of time to explore the sculpture garden at your leisure as well, so you can see some of the other sculptures that he has. Another motif that he uses a lot is the land as a sacrifice, and so a lot of the sculptures that he has have to do with the land and whether it's a physical sacrifice that's taking place on the land or whether the land itself is a sort of offering or other plays on the sacrificial sort of theme. He does that a lot as well in his artwork and his sculptures. Okay, so I keep saying Kochava Yarden, the Jordan star or the star of the Jordan. So let's go and take a look at said Jordan. And I don't mean the country, I mean the river. So we are going to head on down to the Jordan River because what we see when we're at Masada is not the Jordan River that we have up here in this area. So the Jordan River can really be divided into two. We have the part that's to the north of the Sea of Galilee, and we have the part that's to the south of the Sea of Galilee. And they are very different rivers, and we're looking at the part that's to the north of the Sea of Galilee. The northern part, well, we've been to the very beginnings of it when we were in Tel Dan. The Dan Springs and the Dan Stream is one of the main tributaries of the Jordan River. And so we've been to the beginning of it up there. And we've also been to Masada, and the Dead Sea right underneath Masada is where the Jordan River ends. So we've seen the start and the finish of it. And so now we're taking a look at sort of the middle. Now, the Jordan River is a very popular place to go, especially north of the Sea of Galilee, because here it's still a flowing river, much more like what you would expect to find, as opposed to the area that is south of the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so here you can see all these cars. Stop the video. Stop. Okay. Okay. You can see this is a huge line of cars that have parked up here. Whoever has a 4x4 will come down and, keep going. But if you don't have a 4x4, you have to stop up here and walk the rest of your way down. And this is an area that people really like to go camping in. People will, bring their sofa, sleeping bag, bathing suit, a cooler, and go camping for a night, a week, sometimes longer. And this is something that a lot of people like to do in this area up here, whether, especially the locals, sometimes people from further south will come up as a sort of getaway. A lot of times you see this on holidays when we're not in lockdown. Now, the southern part of the Jordan River, meaning south of the Sea of Galilee, looks nothing like this. It's much more a drainage canal than the free flowing river that we're seeing because we have a dam on the Sea of Galilee. And today the Sea of Galilee is still one of our main sources of drinking water, but we're starting to rely less and less on it because our desalination technology is becoming better and better. And especially since we had two rainy winters in a row, we're a little less concerned with the water level in the Sea of Galilee. So the Sea of Galilee is actually it's our only fresh body of water here in Israel. It's 200 meters below sea level, whereas the Dead Sea is 400 meters below sea level. One of the reasons that water flows south in that direction. And basically, the Sea of Galilee was our main source of drinking water. We would pump, and then scientists said, okay, don't pump beneath that line because that's going to be really bad for everyone involved. It's going to be bad for the ecology of the area. It's going to be bad for the environment. It's going to be bad for us. We need to make sure we have a lot of water in the Sea of Galilee. And we said, okay, yeah, no problem. We won't pump beneath that line. But then, drought year after drought year after drought year, and population keeps increasing, and we're not desalinating yet. And so we cross that line. And then we come up with a new line. We say, okay, don't pump beneath that line because you'll break the pumps. It's like, okay, so we can't pump beneath that line. The pumps can only pump what's above them. All right, that's how our pumps work. They're like a suction vacuumy thing that sucks the water down from above them and into our filtration systems that purify them a bit before they get pumped into our water carrier network. And they cannot pump anything that is below them. They'll start pumping air and they'll break. So no pumping beneath that line. At that point in time, we get really creepy commercials about how the land is drying. Okay, there was this woman who she just tells you in a very dramatic way about how things are drying. And then how when your soil dries, it begins to crack. So they made her face do that. Very creepy commercial. If you'd like, I can show it to you later. It's on YouTube. Um, Luckily, we're not there anymore. We've had two fantastic winters, and the Sea of Galilee is a meter beneath its full level, which means that we've pumped about a meter since last winter. So in the past year, we've pumped a meter of water. And at the end of the past winter, the water authority was very worried that they would have to open the dam at the southern tip of the Sea of Galilee because they were worried about flooding in Tiberias. Okay, so very exciting times. I really want them to open that dam, but they're insistent that that costs too much money. I don't really understand the budgetary constraints, and it was cheaper and easier to dig new ditches and workarounds as opposed to opening the dam. But basically, that's why the southern part of the Jordan River is very different from the northern part of the Jordan River, because up until it goes into the Sea of Galilee, it's a free flowing river without too much human intervention. And then once it comes out of the Sea of Galilee, we're greatly limiting the flow. So it looks and feels very different. So I have friends that live not too far from the Jordan River. They live on a kibbutz called Amir, and it's basically right up against the Jordan. And so during the summer, when you're on summer vacation and friends visit, you go tubing in the Jordan. Now, I'm sure that if you've been to Israel with children during the summer, you've done some variation of this or another. You might not have ridden a bike with a tube on you in order to get there, but most groups that come with kids will go rafting on the Jordan River. So there are a few different companies that do this. They basically offer generally the same sort of experience, but this is the way the locals do it. Okay, so if you're on a kibbutz that is adjacent to the Jordan, you get on your bikes, you park your bike along the gate of the kibbutz, you bring your own tube, or else you're not going to have a tube to use, and then you walk along the boardwalk or the promenade, which has little inscriptions of different Bible verses that mention the Jordan River. I got instructions as to how to use the tube because it's not your normal inner tube. They bought these special tubes that have one side is much thicker than the other, so it makes a really nice backrest. And then you have to make sure that the pointy part where you pump the air in is facing downward so it doesn't poke you. And then it's very convenient. They have these a ladder. It's a ladder basically, and you just have to get yourself settled into your tube and push off. Okay, so they live right on the Jordan River. This thing across from us is actually in Kfar Blum. Kfar Blum has is one of it's a kibbutz. It has one of the different companies that do all of the rafting along the Jordan. So this is one of their starting points. And then once you're in, you just kind of lazy river your way down. Okay, so we call it rafting. It's a big floaty raft. It's not whitewater rafting or anything. And then all of a sudden he says, "Okay, we have to get out here." And I was like, "What? Here? What does that even mean here? How do you know?" And I said, "Okay, how do you want me to get out?" He says, "Oh, over there. You see those roots? You just have to, grab them and pull yourself out." I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's way easier said than done." Um, but, it was actually easier than I anticipated it being. So, I guess I got that going. Okay, so here we go, out of the water. And right, we said that we saw that large stream of cars. So here also people come and picnic. So we're not going to bother them and we'll say goodbye and see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Comments or questions?
I see there's 10 things in the chat about how much instruction? When was this built? I assume this would be the Crusader fortress. Um, so after 1099 and before 1187. Um, and then what was the furnace field? Who built the fortress? The Crusaders. Okay, great. Were they Jewish? Uh, okay. Were they Jewish? No, the Crusaders were Christians. Though the archaeology points to the fact that this fortress was built actually on top of a Talmudic village that was here during the time period. So there was a Jewish settlement in the area before the Crusaders. Uh, I guess it was abandoned before the Crusaders arrived, and they used some of the leftover construction materials in order to build their fortress. Um, who was the commanding officer? Did they have a rank? That's a great question. This is sort of an answer. Okay, so when they ate dinner, they had like like picnic tables. You have a table and the benches, and then there was the chair for the commanding officer. So he was the chairman. Okay. So that doesn't quite answer the question, but kind of. Grand Master at the time, according to the internet. Awesome. Okay, more questions? Anyone want to see the really creepy commercial?
We've got plenty of those, thank you. We all just survived the election season.
Just a quick comment, because about the Crusades,
Yes.
the Jews and the Muslims were united and fighting the invading Christian army. And there are records of how the Jews fought more fiercely than the Arabs who lived there.
Yeah. Well, it's a relatively recent development that Jews and Muslims don't get along. So yeah, I mean, the Crusaders definitely did a lot of damage both to the Jewish communities when they were on their way in, and to the Christians. Or I mean, they even definitely to the Muslims and also to the Christians that were living here. They didn't really do much discrimination between who they were killing and why. They just knew they were sent over here to kill people, and so that's what they did. Very exciting times. Glad I wasn't alive back then. I'll take pandemic over crusades any day.
Amazing. Okay. Look at that. You answered all the questions. You got us through the site. Everyone is just enwrapped. That's for sure.
And we even went tubing on the Jordan River.
Exactly.
I bet you didn't think you were going to go tubing when it's 38 degrees outside, did you?
Oof. When I was there last summer with Rotem and our family trip for the Beth Or families, I'm in a raft. The school principal gets put in a raft with a bunch of the school students. That was a lot of fun. We were having a lot of fun, but a bee flew into the raft. Did I tell you all this story? A bee flies in, and so these children are all freaking out. And I'm trying to steer the raft, and I'm trying to keep them calm. I'm saying, everybody calm down. If you remain calm, it won't sting anybody. But if you keep freaking out, it'll sting somebody. And sure enough, it stung someone. Me. It stung me right on the back of my thigh. Or no, it was on my arm. That's where it was. It was on my arm. I forgot about that. Yep. And so that was, look, I'll take one for the team. That's for sure. I didn't need the EpiPen.
You're a bigger target.
I'm saying to the bee, I'm on your side, man. What were you thinking? So, all right. Well, very good, everybody. We will see you in. Lila.
Yeah.
When we were in Israel, we were rafting on the Jordan, and we had stayed, I guess, the night before, 2 nights at the Kafar Bloom kibbutz. So that brought back memories.
Yay.
It's fun.
We stayed. Where did we stay? Were we at Kfar Bloom or at Sar? Where?
I think we stayed at Kfar Bloom.
I think so too.
You know what? I've got it. Well, never mind. Yeah, it's a nice
I'm
place.
sure it's here somewhere. Nice.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't
He's
matter.
way more prepared than I am.
That's a different one. Oh, well. Here's a different Israel trip packet.
Fine then.
Excellent. Well, very good, everybody. We will see you then in the year to come. We will,
Wow.
I know, it'll be January. And where's our next site?
Well, it's supposed to be Ein Hod, the artist colony.
Nice.
I'm working on that. I haven't. I'm working on figuring out what's open, if at all. So that one's going to be interesting in one way or another.
Absolutely.
It might be a little bit of Ein Hod and the area. Oh my God.
We forgot to record.
We didn't
tonight.
record.
Oh.
We'll have to do it again.
We completely meant to record this session tonight.
God.
Whitton was doing it for a fellow guide, and I had a couple of people who weren't here. All right.
Damn it. No, we haven't recorded anything.
Nope.
Nothing. At all.
Well, we hadn't intended to record until
right.
tonight.
Okay. Is there a way to make it automatically record the minute you open the thing? No? Why not?
We'll have to set ourselves reminders on our phones.
Oh my God. Because that's just been working so well.
I unmuted us, tell them.
At the bottom of our screen, there's a record button.
Right.
I don't know
Yep.
if you have it, but we could record it.
Yeah.
Aaron, it's Jackie. Quick, when you set up the meeting, if you scroll to the bottom when you set it up, there's an automatic record.
Oh, there
option.
is.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Yeah.
Oh,
Excellent. Well, we will.
it's not
We
at the
will
bottom
remember.
of our screen. It's at the bottom when you set it up.
Right on my settings screen. You're saying.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie. Appreciate it. Right. Yep. We'll have to do it for next time. Shoot.
Oops.
We'll remind you.
Very good. That would be very useful.
Yeah, that would be useful.
If he remembers.
If we right.
That's a
If
big
any of us-
if.
if
Well,
any of
there's
us remember.
42 of you that can remember. So hopefully,
Don't count on me remembering.
Excellent.
Ready to leave?
Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you coming. And have a good December. Chag Urim Sameach. A happy Hanukkah to everybody. That's a week from tonight.
Yeah.
First candle.
Hanukkah.
yeah, hopefully we won't be in lockdown.
Man, there's light at the end of the tunnel. All we have to do is survive until the vaccine gets here.
Right. Good luck to us all.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Happy December and Happy New Year.
entertaining.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
See you guys next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm going to end the meeting in 3, 2,